In Chapter 31 of Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, Marianne's mood swings from a desire to hide in her room to a fierce determination to face the world. But she can't bear the company of Mrs. Jennings. Soon, Colonel Brandon arrives and gives Elinor information he hopes will comfort the family. He tells a long story about his cousin Eliza, first mentioned in Chapter 11. They grew up friends and fell in love. But at 17, she was forced to marry Brandon's older brother to join their two family fortunes. She and Brandon had planned to elope, but were thwarted by a servant, and their relationship ended. Eliza's marriage to Brandon's older brother was unhappy, and Eliza had an affair that led to divorce. Her fortune remained mostly with her husband, leaving her deeply in debt. She also became terminally ill. 3.5 years later, Brandon returned from the West Indies, found Eliza, and provided for her until she died. Soon after, Colonel Brandon became the guardian of Eliza's little girl, also named Eliza, now 17, the same age as Marianne. In the meantime, Brandon's brother died and left the family estate to him. Brandon took care of Eliza, sending her to a good school. But a year ago, young Eliza Williams vanished. She finally wrote to Brandon, and this was the letter that caused him to leave Barton Park so suddenly. The letter explained that a young man had seduced her, gotten her pregnant, and abandoned her. Brandon later persuaded Eliza to reveal the young man's name. It was John Willoughby. Brandon tells Elinor that he challenged Willoughby to a duel, but since neither man was wounded, the matter stayed quiet, and Brandon settled Eliza and her child in the country. When Brandon leaves, Elinor is full of compassion and esteem for him. In Chapter 32 of Sense and Sensibility, Marianne listens to Elinor repeat Colonel Brandon's story about Willoughby. She does not defend her former lover, and afterwards she behaves toward Brandon with respect. But her misery deepens as she thinks of what Willoughby did to Eliza and might have done to her. Marianne feels the loss of his character more heavily than the loss of his heart. Letters from Mrs. Dashwood urge Marianne and Elinor not to return early to Barton Park, where memories will overwhelm her. Also, John and Fanny will soon be in London, and Mrs. Dashwood wants her daughters to visit them. Marianne takes some comfort in knowing that Elinor will likely see Edward, but Elinor dreads this possibility. Visits from Brandon cause Mrs. Jennings to imagine matching him with Elinor. 2 weeks go by. In February, Willoughby's marriage is announced, renewing Marianne's grief. And shortly afterward, the Steeles arrive in London and pay an uncomfortable call on Elinor.